Okay, am I audible over here over the web? Okay, yes, Ajar, today's class is all about your question, so I'll try to answer your question, right? Okay then. Okay, so the topic which we are going to discuss for today is or for this next 2 weeks is DevOps on Windows platforms. All right, primarily our focus is majorly on Linux based systems, right? But we have equal number of Windows servers in production. We have equal number of Windows servers in production, and basically not many people are competent over there. Not many people are competent over there. So our focus would be, how do I perform DevOps activities on Windows? Yeah, we can use all the tools which we learn. For example, you can use Ansible on Windows. You can use Chef on Windows, which you are going to learn, right? But there are certain things which you need to know about Windows, which if you want to use them. All right. So because Windows is not actually like Linux, there are many differences. All right. And there are many openings also on Windows DevOps. So what it demands is, generally for Linux, people expect you to be a decent. People expect you to have a decent knowledge on shell scripting, right? The equivalent of that on the Windows world, we have PowerShell scripting. All right. So we need to learn that, and there is something called as PowerShell DSC, desired state configuration. I'll basically today our motive is to understand what these technologies are. I'll not be taking very much technical dive today. Okay, day one, right? So yeah, so and after that we would be learning Docker containers on Windows. How do they behave? How do they work? So this is our focus for this next 2 weeks of our agenda. The whole reason why we are adding this is, yeah, most of the DevOps tools are partial towards Linux. All right. So, but if you have to achieve something on Windows, you can still achieve without or with the help of existing tools. And for that, you need to be good at whatever we are learning today or in these 2 weeks. That's the whole agenda, right? So this will improve your what do you call, the resume visibility or the number of jobs which you go not less than 10 to 20% of what you are getting right now. అంటే ఇప్పుడు వారానికి ఒక 10 కాల్ వస్తుంటే దీనివల్ల ఇంకో 2 యాడ్ అవుతాయి, because that's the whole idea, right? And not many people are competent over here, and let us increase our competency. The whole point is, how do you get into your job and how do you get the better packages, right? That's the puzzle which you are trying to solve, right? So that's why we discuss this. Fine. So why Windows? And if it is in Windows, what is special? What is special in Windows when compared to Linux stuff? The problem with Windows has been, Windows is predominantly UI based tools. So for example, you want to configure something in Windows. If you are doing it manually, most easiest thing to be done. But the problem is, whenever you want to automate it, the way you automate Windows will become slightly complicated when compared to Linux. Because in Linux, whether you do it manually or whether you do it in an automated way, you will be going via CLI. So that helps easily in automation, because you have to do the same thing. But in Windows, we have to learn altogether a new way, which Windows is predominantly bringing. It was there in from PowerShell 3, they have given this version. So, or if I have to tell the time frame, the moment 8.1 was released, Windows 8.1, Microsoft has started thinking towards these kind of operations management. But earlier it was all predominantly UI. And let us assume that I have done, you daily log in into your system, right? And in C drive there will be one folder. You copy that folder by right clicking on the mouse or Control C, right? And then you paste it onto the D drive. Now you have to automate this. So for you need to understand, how do I need to do this? Because I use UI, right? And UI automations are not very stable. But if you are a Linux user, right, To copy that, you don't do right clicks and you don't do all of that stuff. You just go to the folder, you do cp, you say cp minus f, and basically tell what is the source folder and what is the destination folder. Your automation is no different. You have to tell that in a file. That's it. Can in Windows we are not used to this kind of stuff. That's what our focus is. All right. Okay. So let us basically speak about something before Windows, and then let us try to understand what is that we are going to learn and what is the prerequisite for that and how do we start that. Right. Okay. Okay. If I'll not be basically speaking anything about Chef, but there will be uh, some stuff around those tools today. And I have a MacBook Pro. Is it mandatory to have Windows for this training? No. You can, even if you have a cloud account, you can manage, because you can create a Windows server on the cloud. There is no need for you to worry about really having the all the operating systems with you. Not required. Fine. Okay then. Okay. So let us basically think on these lines. Your company is developing a .NET application. A .NET application. Okay. They have to host this application. Obviously, it will be hosted on some Windows server. Makes sense, right? Even though today's .NET might work on Linux, let us assume that this product was built at least 7 or 8 years ago, and we are maintaining that, right? And there are some new features which they are coming into this product to support mobile platforms and all of that, whatever it is. So this is the stuff, and you basically use Microsoft SQL Server. This is what your company is doing right now, right? So now what you want to do is you want to automate this stack. You want to automate this stack like what we have discussed yesterday. So developer commits the code, and then we build the code, we package the code, and then after packaging the code, we have to copy that to the environment or create the environment and then do whatever it is, right? That is all wonderful on Linux platforms, but on Windows it is not that easy cakewalk, because Windows is slightly different over here, right? So how do I solve this? Okay, if not getting too much specific into terminology, let us see how do we achieve this. All right. So now this is my Windows server where I have to install my .NET application. Okay. And yesterday I've said that there is a web server called as Apache, but on Microsoft platforms they use IAS, right? Okay. And then we have a database server which is Microsoft SQL Server. Fine. Now, first thing is what you would get is you would get a plain Windows machine. You might not get IAS configured to your needs. All right. Now, if you have a plain machine, how will you configure that IAS? We have to configure IAS first so that it matches our application. That is the first step. And then copy whatever your application which your team has built. Same thing with database. Same thing with database. Right? And apart from that, we might also need to do some activities like, can you disable the firewall? Because if you have a firewall, my application might not work. You might have some other activity, something like that. Right? So you have to manage all of this stuff. So let us see how can we solve this. All right. So one way is manual, and I'm not worrying anything about manual. ఒక పని ఎలా చేయొచ్చంటే ఆ machine లో you can do the remote desktop into it and do all of these activities manual, right? I'm not discussing anything about manual because I know manual is possible, right? I wanted it in an automated fashion. Now let us see how will you do that. So I'll add one more server. I'll add one more system. I'll not say whether it is a server or whatever it is, right? From this system, I want to manage these two. From this system, I want to manage these two. So on machine, I have to basically configure IAS, right? So let us assume I have some sort of script for that. I have a script which will basically does the IAS operation. And then I have one more script. So I'll call it as script A, script B. And script B will manage SQL server. Good. Simple. All right. ఎందుకంటే మనం రాయట్లేదు కాబట్టి సింపుల్ ఏబి కాబట్టి. Now, how do I write this script? How do I write this script? There are two ways of writing any script. Okay. One we call it as imperative, the other one we call it as declarative. Okay. So for the people who have been traveling with me, you already know, but I am telling the technical term towards it. All right. Imperative and declarative. So let me tell you what is the difference. You are a team leader. Let us assume you are a team leader. I am a fresher. I have joined in your team. Right. You have to assign me the work. Okay. So how will you assign me the work? Will you tell what has to be done, or will you tell how it has to be done? For a fresher, he doesn't know anything about what your work is quite new from his graduation, right? He might know some basic stuff. So you will tell how it has to be done. All right. So I'm an experienced person. I've been in the same industry for approximately 5 or 6 years or 10 years, whatever it is. I join your team. You are the team leader. So now your assignment will be what or how. What, right? When you tell how it has to be done, that is called as the imperative way of programming. When you tell how it has to be done, it is imperative. When you tell what has to be done, then that is declarative. Then it is declarative. So your script can be, what is it? Your script can be imperative or declarative. Or to be very specific, how, what. Simple, right? So what is that you prefer? What is easy to do? As a user, ఎలా చేయాలో చెప్పడం ఈజీనా, ఏం చేయాలో చెప్పడం ఈజీనా? ఎలా చేయాలో చెప్పడం ఈజీ. What has to be done is much easier, right? I want an IAS server to be enabled with the following features, right? Or is it easy for you to basically tell how it has to be done, because whatever it is? So what is your way of doing it? So scripts can be of these two types, imperative or declarative. So when I say imperative, here shell scripting will come into play. In shell scripting, I'm not sure whether you have looked at any shell script, if I'm not wrong, but for the people who already have a knowledge of it, shell scripts, we tell how it has to be done. In the same way, PowerShell, these are imperative. You have to tell what has to be done. So for example, I have to create a folder. You need to tell that you have to use make dir command. You have to tell that create a folder using make dir and just give the path, and then it would work. Copy the file. You have to tell the same thing, right? And then when it comes to declarative, this notation we call it as, I'm sorry, almost. This notation we call it as IAC, which is infrastructure as code. Oh, infrastructure as code. Here, whenever we are saying declarative, there will be some specific way to tell it. There will be specific way to tell it. Imperative, it is the way which you already know. The plain Linux commands. Are you getting the pain? నా పైన అయితే మీకు ఎలా చేయాలో మొత్తం అన్ని స్టెప్స్ చెప్పాలి. You have to tell how it has to be done. You have to tell each and everything. But when you come to here, you will have something called as infrastructure as a code. And now, whenever you write in this infrastructure as a code, there will be a specific syntaxes for that, specific way of telling it, right? So that we call it as DSL, domain specific language, right? So this is your where your chef will come into play. This is where your Ansible will come into play, and this is exactly where your PowerShell DSC. So to PowerShell DSC, we would like to tell it declaratively or imperatively. Declaratively, because it knows how to do the things. You are telling what you want. You are telling what you want. But when it comes to shell scripts or PowerShell scripts or batch scripts, they don't know how to do the things. You have to tell each and every step. Are we clear? Right? Scripts are of two types: imperative, declarative. Shell, PowerShell are examples of imperative. When you speak of declarative, your chef, Puppet, or basically PowerShell DSC, Terraform, these things fall under the category of IAC. So for the people from the cloud formation forms under this, all of that. So when I say infrastructure of as a code, don't worry that you have to write C code or Python code or Java code, nothing like that. They will have their own syntaxes. You have to tell to PowerShell DSC in a syntax which it understands, right? So మీ దగ్గర ఒక మంచి పాలేరు ఉన్నాడు. You have a very good worker in your farm, right? But the problem is he speaks only Tamil. So what will you do? You would learn Tamil, right? That's what we are trying to do. He's a very good worker, but the only problem is he will not learn the other language. You have to speak with him in Tamil and he will get the work delivered. Wonderful worker. You don't want to leave him, right? So at least we will learn to an extent where we understand some farming terminology in Tamil, right? That is what we are trying to do, because he knows many things. He knows many things, right? So we can write scripts. Scripts can be written in two ways. Are we good in this? Till this point, are we clear? Now, let us assume that we have written the script now. Good. We have written the script. Now, what will happen? We have, I'll call this as some sort of server. Okay, I'll not be naming it because there are specific names around it. In this server, there are scripts, whatever you have written, in whatever way, right? Now, those scripts you want to apply it onto your servers. Let me call your servers as A, and this is B, and this is S. So on A and B, you want to basically configure so that IAS is working, and on B, you want to configure so that Windows Microsoft SQL Server has basically some configuration. Now, how can this be done? ఇద్దరు మాట్లాడుకోవాలి. Two people have to speak. Who will start the conversation? Anyone. What is problem? Anyone can start, right? It can be B speaking with yes, A speaking with yes, or the other way around. Yes might speak with A and B, right? So let us look at these models. Yes speaks with A, okay, and S speaks with B. So the place where you have scripts, which I am calling it as a server, is speaking with your infrastructure. Is speaking with your infrastructure. This way, where a server pushes scripts, all right, onto your servers, is called as push model. Is called as push model. Push is when your server is sending the scripts, right? And what are the scripts that are doing on your system? What is that your script is doing on your system? It is configuring your system, right? So basically what we are doing is we are doing configuration management. We are doing configuration management, and basically server is pushing the scripts. So this is called as push model, right? Let us assume the story is the other way around. Okay, it is not this, but your A asks yes and B asks yes. Are you getting the whole point? Who starts the communication? I'm speaking about a initial communication, right? So this model is called as simple. So we write a script, right? And script we can be written in two different ways. And then we go to the scripts, we take it to some server, and then server to your infrastructure configuration can be in two ways. One is called as a push model, the other one is called as a pull model. And while writing the scripts, we will be writing them in declarative or imperative, whatever that makes sense to you, right? So when I speak about push, Ansible falls under this category. Ansible falls under this category. So Ansible is a push model configuration management, right? And now pull, chef, puppet. Then what is where is PowerShell DSC? PowerShell DSC is also a configuration management tool, right? PowerShell DSC can also be, should be one of them. But PowerShell DSC can do both. PowerShell DSC lo rendu cheyochu. That's the best part. Now, based out of your architecture, you decide what you want to do. How do you want to do? Whether you want to do push the configuration management or whether you want to do the pull. So push is simple to configure, pull is slightly complicated, right? Every model will have its own advantages. All right, are we good now? Right? So I know this image is quite clumsy, so let me basically remove. You got the context, right? So to do configuration management, I'm writing a script, and while writing the script, I can choose whether it is simple, right? When I am saying simple, it is declarative. Writing the script is simple and declarative. Writing the script is slightly complicated and imperative, right? But the rest of the architecture is will become slightly complicated in declarative sense. But you have to just understand this terminologies. You have to understand this terminologies. So basically, this is what a configuration management is all about. When you do Ansible, when you do Chef, whenever you are doing PowerShell DSC, you are doing this, right? Very important area, very important area, because once you have the server and whenever you want to do your deployments daily, right, you want to update your product daily, then you have to go with configuration management. Now, any questions till this point before I go to the next important discussion called as idempotency? Let me look at the web. DSL acronym is DSL is domain specific language. So for example, if you want to work on my software and I am not using any traditional tool, but I tell you to use something which I have developed newly, that is called as DSL. That is called as DSL, right? So yeah, I'm not sure what Docker is. I cannot relate with your earlier question. Oh, fine. Configuration management means push model. No, it can be push or pull. Configuration management is you have a server and you are configuring something on that so that your applications work. That's it, right? And that configuration can be done by shell scripts and PowerShell scripts also, right? But still we go with configuration management. Why we do that, I'll tell in next half. But are we clear till this point? Yes. Any doubts on here? Right. Who will decide which one to use? For example, if you go with Ansible, you cannot, you have chosen push already. You go with Chef, you have decided already that you are going with pull model, right? In PowerShell, we have a flexibility, you can choose one of them. In PowerShell DSC, you can choose whatever makes sense to you, right? Okay. So who will decide that? So I think the most easiest answer for me would be your boss, all right? But actually, there are many factors which will make us choose what is the best mode, right? So basically, whenever you want it to be simple, everyone should be able to deploy, then you go for a push model. Push is very simple because you develop the script and it would basically go and set. But if it is restrictive environments and you want to be very strict about your environments, then I think pull is better, right? Yeah. PowerShell DSC is also like a script. Yeah, it is a script. PowerShell DSC is a script, right? But it has some additional properties. It has some additional properties, right? So one property which we have already discussed is it is not imperative, which means in PowerShell DSC you will never tell how to do. You will mostly tell what has to be done. You will mostly tell what has to be done, right? Okay then. So for the sake of this, let me. Okay, fine. Now we have shell or PowerShell scripts, right? We already have them. Why do I need configuration, man? Why do I need configuration? Valid question, right? నా దగ్గర ఆల్రెడీ షెల్ స్క్రిప్ట్స్ ఉన్నాయి. I already have shell scripts. I already have PowerShell scripts. Then why do I need one extra overhead on me, which is configuration management? All right. Okay. That we will do because of one important factor, which is called as idempotency. This is the only reason why we go for configuration. Yeah. Then comes the other properties like basically scalability. You can apply the same script on multiple machines and all of that. That comes at the later point of time. But the first thing with that comes into play is idempotency. Idempotency. What is idempotency? Okay. So let me tell you a simple example before I would go with idempotency. You have purchased a calculator, right? And you perform the operation of 2 plus 2. What is the result? 2 plus 2, 2 అవుతుందా? All right. Okay, fine. Okay. 4. You do it for the second time. What would be your answer? Same. 10,000 time. పాపం ఇన్నిసార్లు కష్టపడుతున్నాడు కదా, ఒకటి యాడ్ చేద్దాం అనుకుంటుందా? రైట్. సో if you take a calculator and if you perform some operation, you will always be getting the same result as long as your operation is same, right? Any administrators in the room? Right, we have many, right? I'm quite sure that you might have written some sort of shell script or a PowerShell script, right? Some script in your day-to-day life. I execute your script for the first time, I'll get some result. Second time, is it guaranteed that I'll get the same result? Third time, fourth time, fifth time, you never know what could happen. And if the script is doing good, that is because of the intelligence of the person who has written it. So calculator నేను 100 సార్లు calculator I have done 100 times of 2 plus 2, it is always giving me 4, right? But generally the shell scripts which we write or PowerShell scripts which we write or the batch scripts which we write will have some assumptions. Do this only on a newly installed machine. Don't run it anytime. That's the first problem. When you run it for the first time, it might give you the desired result. Second time, it might or might not. Third time, all right. Fourth time, it is we never know. And if the script is doing good, that is not because okay it is bad. It is just because the person who has written the script has not taken care of the situation. And shell scripting lo idi kudaradani kaadu. I'm not telling that it is not possible to do this in shell scripting. It is definitely possible. But generally, when the admins or when the people write the script, they don't worry about what happens when I execute the script again and again. The problem is your script, when it executed multiple times, might not give you the same result. Might not give you the same result. But whenever any script which you have written, whether it is ran for the first time or thousands of time, always gives you the same result. That is called as idempotent. That is called as idempotent. Configuration management tools are mostly idempotent. Let us assume that you have written a script which enables IaaS, right? You have taken a new Windows server, you run it, right? It would enable the IaaS. You run it for the second time, IaaS is already enabled, so I am not running. That will be the statement of your code. Install as Microsoft SQL Server. SQL Server not present on the machine, it will install it. You are doing it already on the present, on the machine where SQL Server is already present. It will just basically say that SQL Server is already present, so I'm not doing anything. So basically, the importance of configuration management tools is they maintain something called as state. They maintain something called as state. And what is the state? So remember, in the declarative way of programming, what is that you will be writing? How to do or what has to be done? What has to be done? So what is your state? Configuration management scripting will try to maintain state, and then basically the state is nothing but whatever you have asked. The state is nothing but whatever you have asked. For example, you will not say basically something like create me a folder in D drive, right? So let us assume that create a folder in D drive called as quality thought. That is a way of telling to the shell script. Now in the configuration management, my literature will turn something like this: ensure in D drive quality thought folder is present. Okay, so let me write down these words so that you will understand the essence of how do we write the stuff. Generally, while writing shell scripting, we will say create a folder, okay, D colon slash, I'm lazy, so let me write just a qt. Okay, simple. This is the way of telling to the shell script, or a declarative way. On an imperative way. In a declarative way, you will tell ensure D drive colon qt is. Are you understanding the difference? What is the difference between these two statements? In the first statement, you are telling we create a folder. In the second statement, you are telling that ensure that it is present. Ensure that it is present. So second statement is what we want to eventually move to. Are we getting the whole point? Right? Now let me open some sample stuff. All right. So PowerShell DSC folder chef recipe. Okay. I'll not get into what they mean, but let us just look at. Okay, whatever it is, I'm not really worried about. Okay, so here whatever you are seeing is a DSL. Chef will understand what has to be done when you tell it like this. But see, what is he trying to tell? Service Apache, and he's telling some actions, and then he's telling retries 3, right? Or I'll take it to a very simple stuff. Okay, 1 minute. Let me go to something called as I want to install a software. That is when I'll use something called as package. But let me go to the example of package. Man, come on. He is telling that I want to install something called a star. So what is trying to tell? Package star action install. Next time when you execute the script, it will check whether the tar has been installed or not. If it is installed, it will not execute this. But if you write the same thing in shell script, for every condition, you have to write one if condition around it. If it is already present, don't do that. That the script will become quite clumsy, right? Now let me go to the Ansible playbook. Man, Manikanta, a charger. Good, it has prompted. Charging answer. Sorry guys, there was a power. Ratla. Okay, fine. Let me go to the Ansible playbook. I'm just showing you different versions of the same thing. All right. So come on. I want just, yeah. So basically, where is the other one? So what is he trying to tell? There is yum, and he's telling writing some package. We don't understand what that is. But if you see, there is something called a state. In the case of Ansible, there is something called as state, and in the case of Chef, there is something called as action. Right? So if you basically see over here, these scripts look result oriented. They are very much worried about the result. They are not worried about how you do it. They are not worried about how you do it. And exactly that is the same thing of what PowerShell DSC also does. But the one problem with using PowerShell DSC is you should be good at PowerShell already. For the PowerShell DSC, the whole point why Microsoft has taken that route was PowerShell DSC was something which is given to the Microsoft administrators or whoever is using PowerShell already. So that they had that as a design intent in their brains before that. So we want to write something like this in PowerShell DSC so that we can enable Windows features. But the problem is, to do this, you should already be good with PowerShell as a prerequisite of that. And I'm quite sure that not many people have ever used PowerShell here. Am I right? PowerShell ఎంతమంది వాడతారు daily for their work? No one in the room. All right? That's the problem. So that's why we want to start from PowerShell, and then eventually we will be in a state where we will be performing this. Where we will be performing this. So we have to go with PowerShell scripting first, right? And then PowerShell DSC, and then eventually we'll at the last as the last topic we'll be discussing on Windows containers. How does the Docker container work in Windows environment or on Windows servers? That's the basic agenda. Fine. Yes. Looking good. So do we understand what we are trying to do in the next 2 weeks? Any doubts in that area? అసలు ఫస్ట్ మనం ఏం చేస్తున్నామో అర్థమైతే ఎలా అన్నది ఎలాగైనా నేర్చుకోవచ్చు. ఎందుకు చేస్తున్నాం, ఏం చేస్తున్నాం, right? What is that we are trying to achieve and why do we do that? Okay, so the activity which you are doing right now will help you in doing continuous delivery and continuous deployment. You are learning it in DevOps because the stuff which you are learning will help you to automate the continuous delivery or continuous deployment. What is continuous delivery? How many of you have not attended the demo yesterday? ఇవాళ వచ్చి నిన్న రానోళ్ళు ఎంతమంది? Right? Please take the recording of yesterday or ask Satish to forward that. It is not a very technical discussion of DevOps, but I have discussed some terminologies over there. All right. So build, compile, package, and then you create a test environment in your office. Till that, if you do, we call it as continuous delivery. If you take it to your production servers, we call it as continuous deployment. Right. So if you want to do all of those activities to automate your delivery pipeline, and this will help once your code is ready, once your package has been ready, and then you have to configure your system. Make sense? Right? Okay. So are we using Windows DevOps for production deployment? Yeah, if your company is using something like the scenario which I said, where they are using .NET application and Windows environment, you can use the stack for production deployments. Yes. So it basically depends on what is that your company is building. What is that your company is building, right? Fine. Okay, so now I'll not make it much longer, but let us just also discuss about rest of the aspects which I want to shed some light on. So we want to understand what these terms are. Okay, so I know some of the admins already know all of these terminology, they work with this. We will also shed some light on this so that you will be able to work with these things. Active Directory, DHCP, DNS. All right, so Active Directory is the place where all of your users data is there. This is as a registry or a database for all of the employees in your organization, right? And it is basically governed by a protocol stack which is called as LDAP, right? And then we have DHCP. So DHCP is what? Why we use DHCP? IP address assignment. Yes. Okay. DNS server. You do google.com, right? But your browser will be able to speak with IP addresses only, not by names. The server which is responsible for converting name into an IP address is DNS server, right? So we have two kinds of DNS servers. One is external or public facing, which is for google.com, microsoft.com and these kind of stuff. The other kind of DNS server is present within your office to resolve some host names in your office. So we need to understand slightly about these things also whenever we speak about Windows servers and all of that. So we'll be shedding some light. Okay, I don't want to make it as a Windows administration class, but the way I want to manage them is by using PowerShell. Okay, so ఈ మూడు అంటే ఏంటి, దాంట్లో బేసిక్ వర్క్ ఎలా చేయగలం, రైట్? దిస్ పవర్షెల్ DSC and then Docker on Windows. That is our agenda. Fine. Okay, so any other doubts which we have? I don't want to talk about any other topic. I want it to be very small and decent discussion today without much of technology, right? Is there any difference in Windows and Linux configuration management while you use Chef or Ansible? The way you use Chef or the way you use Ansible doesn't change, but there are some extra configurations which you need to do whenever you are working on Windows servers. Something like PowerShell remote management is you need to enable Windows RM. So how do you do that? That we'll be learning right now. Okay, so there are some aspects of Windows which have to be done, obviously. So those things will be covered right now. Can we deploy Linux machines with PowerShell DSC? Not a very stable area, but Microsoft is trying to make PowerShell DSC cross-platform. Is it? Can you do it today? I don't think so. You will not be able to do it because it is recently made cross-platform, so it is not stable. But PowerShell can be installed on Linux machines. PowerShell core works on Linux machines, but not many people are using it. Microsoft has made it open source, right? PowerShell DSC is also cross-platform as of today, but 1 year ago it was not. So it is not as stable as what you see with Ansible or what you see with Chef, but for on Windows side it is stable, right? Yes. Okay, I have completed my coursework of Devops and paid. Man, Shashank, I don't want these questions over here. Send it a mail to Quality Thought. I say it many times, right? So anything with related to management of your course, what is happening, please write to qualitythought.in@gmail.com. They are the people who are responsible for it. But if you are not satisfied with that response, I'm sure you might have spoken with Ramana, right? So please write it to Ramana. And don't find this other ways. I already have lots of stuff to deal with, and I don't want to get into management also. All right. So, but anything to deal, if I'm here to help, please send a mail. All right. But this, let us leave it to the technical discussion. This and DevOps issues blog. All right. Fine. But I'll ask Satish to look into this. Right. Okay. Not sure if I need to pay again of Windows. Let me ask with Satish to speak with you. I can do that. Okay. మళ్ళీ పే చేయాలా లేదా ఇవన్నీ నాకు తెలియదు. I don't take care of that area. All right. Yeah. In addition to middleware DevOps, can we put Windows DevOps experience? See, there is nothing called as middleware DevOps, by the way. This terminology I'm listening for the first time in my life. Right? DevOps అంటేనే మొత్తం మళ్ళీ దాంట్లో మిడిల్వేర్ ఏంటి? So for example, if you are telling that I worked as a middleware engineer, I have learned DevOps. Now can I add Windows experience? Answer is yes. But middleware DevOps not present. Middleware DevOps, DBA DevOps, tester DevOps, ini DevOps లేవు, ఒకటే DevOps ఉంది. That is automating your complete delivery pipeline. Right? Even Windows DevOps is not a right terminology to use, but I was forced to use it. Windows terminology is not also a good terminology. Right? But I had to, because it is popping up new. So that's why I had to use that. Win DevOps is what I call it. Yeah. Windows DevOps, is it must and should? I would not say whether it is must and should. All right. Say these are small factors which add to your resume, which can make your job search or your process of selecting the job much more easier. That's it. Right. Is it required? I would say if it was required, this is a new stuff which I am starting today. ఇప్పటి వరకు క్వాలిటీ థాట్ డెవాప్స్ లో విండోస్ డెవాప్స్ గురించి ఎప్పుడు మాట్లాడాలి. We have never spoken about Windows DevOps. So is this a required stuff? My answer is still yes or no. It's your choice. But what will this benefit? This will benefit few more interviews to you. Okay, you might be present in new areas, because if you have seen companies like Accenture, there is an opening called as Windows DevOps from last 3 months, not closed. And what is in there? PowerShell and rest of all of our tools, whatever we are learning. All right. So you need to know about those areas, and we are trying to cover those areas. For example, there are openings in all the huge companies with respect to Microsoft DevOps. I didn't want to call it as Microsoft DevOps, so that's why I'm calling it as Win DevOps. All right. So this will help you in getting the job. Is it required? Your choice. So our course was 5-fold course. Now it has become 6-fold course. So the 6 topics which we learn in our course are Ansible, Chef, continuous integration, okay, and then Terraform, Packer, and monitoring, right? And then what was the last one? The Windows DevOps part, right? Out of the 6, choose any 5 intelligently. You are very good. 5 are mandatory, right? What 5 do you want to choose? That is your choice. You use Naukri for that. మీ సొంత తెలివితేటలు కాకుండా నౌకరీ వాడండి. And see what is the majority of the jobs which you are seeing in Naukri. రైట్, మీ ఇంటి దగ్గరలో ఉంటుంది కదా, అంటే కూకట్పల్లి నుండి డాబా ఎక్కితే కనపడే కంపెనీలు ఏమున్నాయి, దాంట్లో ఏం ఓపెనింగ్లు పడుతున్నాయి. రైట్, యూ జస్ట్ ఫిల్టర్ యువర్ సర్చ్ అండ్ చూస్ ఎనీ 5. ఇఫ్ యు ఆర్ అటెండింగ్ 6, వండర్ఫుల్, బట్ 5 is mandatory. What 5? Your choice. But don't miss out Jenkins and Docker. Jenkins and Docker are mandatory, right? So for the rest of the 4, you have 3 options to choose. You choose whatever you want. Right? Yes. Do we added any other new course content in last 6 months in DevOps other than Windows DevOps? I don't remember. What is that I have added? Terraform and Packer. Right? I think Terraform and Packer was added. Did they add any other thing? I don't think so. No. Even if I've added, I might have added small portions, not a topic as such. But in 6 months, I've added Terraform and Packer. Right? Yes. Win DevOps means all the tools developed by Microsoft. I'll not put it that way. I'll put it in Win DevOps means the DevOps tools which work on Windows servers. On Windows servers. Right. Okay. Fine. Any other queries? Right? Okay. Fine then. So that's what I had. Okay. So what is push model? Where server is sending the scripts, whatever scripts which you have written, to your infrastructure. What is pull? When your infrastructure is asking the server, wherever the scripts are present, can you give me the scripts I want to execute? All right. So Ansible is push model, Chef is pull model, PowerShell DSC is can be both. It is your choice, right? But for writing PowerShell DSC, we need to understand PowerShell, and that is what we are going to start from tomorrow. All right. And one more thing which we basically had discussed is there are two kinds of scripts: imperative and declarative. PowerShell DSC is mostly declarative. I'll not call it as completely declarative. I'll call it as mostly declarative. Right? PowerShell is imperative. Shell script is imperative. In Ansible, whatever you write is declarative. In Chef, whatever you write is declarative. So this brings us to a common point saying that configuration managements are generally declarative. So what do I mean by declarative? I will tell what has to be done or how it has to be done. I will tell what has to be done. In basically the imperative stuff, which is like shell scripts, I will tell how it has to be done. So one important property is idempotency. What is idempotency? Whenever you execute your script for the first time or for n number of times, your result is always the same. So let us assume that I have written a PowerShell DSC which will install the SQL server. Whether I run it on the machine with SQL server or without SQL server, my result is always the SQL server. SQL server running on your machine. That is the result. So I will get it irrespective of whatever state you run it from. This we cannot guarantee for our shell scripts or PowerShell scripts because we have that depends on the intelligence of the person who has written it. So you already know one important interview questions. I have shell scripts and I have PowerShell scripts in my office. Why do I need to go with configuration management tools? The answer is idempotence. The answer is idempotence. Next comes something called as orchestration. You can apply this script onto thousands of servers at one time. That is the next benefit. But most important benefit other than this is idempotence. As idempotence లేకపోతే 1000 servers అన్న మాట రాదు. Since it is idempotent, it makes sense for you to go more than one machine. So I can configure 500 Windows servers in my office to make them as IAS by using the same script. Yes, wonderful. You can do with that with PowerShell also. But the most important aspect is idempotence. Fine. So ఇవాళ నేను మాట్లాడిన టెర్మినాలజీ కొత్తది ఐడెంపోటెన్స్ మాత్రమే అండ్ కాన్ఫిగరేషన్ మేనేజ్మెంట్. రైట్, rest of all are mostly very commonly known terms. They are not very technical terms, right? Okay, this is Hari and I am basically from Unix background. Could you suggest would this Devops will help me to get good opportunities since I am going to put the experience along with Unix? So if you are a Unix person and if you know bit of Windows, it would be obviously benefit, right? That's the whole point, right? Yeah, the server used to push or pull script is Windows or Linux server. In PowerShell DSC, it is obviously Windows server. In Ansible or Chef, it is Linux server. All right. In PowerShell DSC, it has to be a Windows server. Okay. Is configuration management in DevOps equal to normal environment build in middleware? No. No. Because for the middleware has to be installed, right? Avuna? So whatever middleware, let us assume that you are using WebSphere. Who installs WebSphere? Configuration management does. Configuration management does install your middleware. And if you write DSL, you can still manage your middleware without getting into that middleware. That's the whole idea, right? So configuration management starts before you install middleware. That's the whole idea. For the configuration management, what is the input? Your operating system. Your system with an operating system which is present and the basic configuration already, right? Yes. Good. Microsoft stack. Yes. Yes. Purpose of Puppet, same as Chef. It is also a configuration management tool, right? Since it was it is trying to, we used to tell Puppet earlier, but I've dropped Puppet and brought in Terraform and Packer, right? So now I'm not covering Puppet in my classes right now, right? Because the number of jobs have reduced, come down. Number of jobs in Ansible are growing up and Puppet is coming down. So that was an alarming point why Ansible is added to our syllabus. Things change. In next 1 year, will you have the same syllabus? I cannot guarantee. Okay, పరిస్థితుల ప్రభావం వల్ల మారచ్చు. All right, fine. Since most of the servers are Linux based on, then how PowerShell DSC will? So can you give me a written statement saying that most of the servers are Linux? In your office it might be, but what about the other office? There are many companies still where they use Windows servers a lot in production. A lot in production. There is not even a single company, okay, which doesn't use at least one Windows server. All of your Active Directories on Windows server. So you cannot see whether you like it or don't like it. You cannot deny Microsoft, man. That's a fact. మీకు నచ్చినా నచ్చకపోయినా ఓకే యాపిల్ని ఓ పొగిడేసే వాళ్ళు కూడా మైక్రోసాఫ్ట్ విండోసే కొంటారు రైట్ సో ఇన్ అతడు దర్ ఇస్ అ ఫేమస్ మూవీ రైట్ అందరికి బెంచ్ బాగుంటుంది కానీ అంబాసిడర్ కొనుక్కుంటారని సేమ్ థింగ్ విత్ మైక్రోసాఫ్ట్ రైట్ సో వెదర్ యూ లైక్ ఇట్ ఆర్ డోంట్ లైక్ ఇట్ యూ యూజ్ విండోస్ అలాట్ రైట్ యా ఫైన్ that's it. So let me stop it at that and let us meet tomorrow, and from tomorrow we'll be dealing with PowerShell scripting, right? So first thing which I want you to basically come to your classes while we discuss about PowerShell scripting is, don't worry about syntaxes, think logically, you will get all the scripting. Okay, చాలా మంది ఆ స్క్రిప్టింగ్ మీద ఫోకస్ పెట్టకుండా దే డోంట్ ఫోకస్ ఆన్ ద లాజిక్ బట్ దే ఫోకస్ ఆన్ మై టైపింగ్ స్పీడ్, my alt tabs, windows are moving very quickly, all of that. So don't focus on that, focus on the logic, then it makes sense, right? Because the tools which we use for PowerShell DSC are very helpful. They are not like shell scripting. In shell scripting you will not have lot of help, but in PowerShell DSC you can debug the code, you can debug your code. If something goes wrong you can correct it, right? So we have very wonderful tools. So we have all the tooling in the world. The only thing which we need to know is logical stuff, right? Yes. Is there any prerequisites for DSC? PowerShell is a prerequisite, that's why we are starting it from tomorrow, right? Can you please elaborate about Chef before we start? No sir, you have to wait for the opportunity, right? For Chef you have to wait for 1 month, right? I am, my focus is not Chef today, my focus is Windows DevOps. So Windows DevOps, Ansible, and then comes the Chef. So you have to wait for 1 more month to listen from me about Chef a lot. All right, yes. Is this the first session or the second one? First session was a demo where I've discussed what is DevOps, what are the basic stuff, why we do DevOps and all of that. But your PowerShell classes, the technical stuff or the actual classes is from today, right? So yesterday's was the basic introduction of DevOps, why we do and what we do and all of that. What are DHCP, DNS, and Active Directory? Some of the Windows services, I would call it. In Windows Server, you would have some of the services. We would be understanding them while we deal with PowerShell. Don't worry about it. All right? Yes. Fine then. Thanks, guys. Thanks for your time.